Welcome, one and all, to another episode of the High Performance Human Podcast. It's Andy here in studio. I am delighted to be joined in person by the absolutely wonderful Belinda Sinclair. Now, Belinda is the head of sales and agent partnerships at domain.com.au. She's a mother of two. She is... My first impression of you, Belinda, right, was one of, you have this tremendously unassuming air of confidence about you, which is very interesting.
Okay.
Because I just love the way that you communicate and the way that you have this ability to disarm people. I noticed that straight away, which is tremendous. Now, as well as that, though, team, she's a dedicated coach, mentor, and champion for women in leadership. And Belinda has run internal leadership programs for over a decade, in educating and empowering others to achieve their full potential. Driven by a purpose and gratefulness, that probably explains that then, she is a committed lifelong learner, always exploring new opportunities. This is going to be an interesting conversation. How are you, first and foremost?
I'm great, Andy. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
This is going to be interesting. It really, really is. Because like I said, gang, right off the top there, Belinda, she is a tremendously accomplished individual and a human being, both in the field and obviously from a personal point of view as well. Got lots of things happening in a great way. But you don't come across as someone that has achieved the level of success that you've achieved, which is really cool, right?
Yeah.
Now, before we get stuck into the meat and potatoes of this episode, do you ever find that has people sort of underestimating you sometimes?
Absolutely. So I think it almost forms as a strength and weakness for me in terms of how that comes across. So works really well in approachability, building relationships, building trust. And then sometimes I actually had it called out a few months ago to me where a male, very successful leader in the real estate industry said, be careful, you might come across as weak because of, you know, the unassuming way you handle yourself. And so, yeah, it's an interesting one that I grapple with a fair bit because I'm not an ego-driven type of person.
Clearly.
But, yeah, there's lots of things that I'm proud of what I've achieved. And so interesting, I grapple with, do I need to change the way I present myself? And there's also, I look at some really successful leaders where I'm like, oh, that's not where, that's not who I want to be as well.
100%. Oh, look, you stay as you are, dog. I think you're fab. All right. Now, for the benefit of the listeners, give us a bit of an MO, a bit of an elevator spiel on who you are, what your role is and what it entails, and what's got you to this point in your life so far.
Yeah, that's a big question.
Big question.
So I think in terms of who I am, always really mindful of not going to what I do for work or my career as that answer. So I think very much I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm, a family member, so sister, daughter, cousin. I call myself a role model and mentor. And then in terms of my career, I'm a head of sales at Domain and have been in the real estate industry since I was just 18. So that's been a big component of my life.
Yep.
Been at Domain for over 11 years. So again, progressed through the business in my fifth role at Domain. Got into leadership about 8 years ago and, have loved and embraced that. But an interesting one in terms of, how I got to where I am is probably reflecting back two things, like my own role models, and happy to chat a bit further, but my parents and the career they had and how that inspired what I've done. And similarly, up until I had kids, I don't speak about this a lot, but I always had, I call them side hustles. So lots of other side businesses going on the side till I got the point of having children and feeling like I sort of had to refine and ended up focus on family, focus on, my role and career.
Yeah. So until you took on the ultimate task of being a mom, You were very much career driven, curiosity, as you said in your bio there, towards trying different things and tasting and learning and so on and so forth. So how did that connect with, because you just alluded to it then, how did that connect with your upbringing? And in terms of not so much who the mentors were, but how did you find those mentors that really helped to bring value to what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So in terms of how I found, my first mentors, like a lot of people, were my parents. And I say that in two forms. There was the mentoring or role modeling of what they were like as parents and humans, and then the role modeling from a career and business perspective. So my parents had a really large network marketing business because they had such a focus on developing like personal development, developing communication skills, developing leadership skills, that networking, that really rubbed off me. And to the point of that burn of entrepreneurship as well as a young age. I remember my dad gave me a book at about 16 and talking about, how you create a passive income. So like really interesting book to get at 16 and start thinking about, what's
back
important.
Then, before it got popular and really prevalent, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think then through them, they connected me into a sort of personal development program that I joined when I was about 18 and stayed on and off till I was about 30, and attended conferences, listened to, now I'm sounding old, but CD, got 5 CDs a month to listen to.
I thought you were going to say cassette then.
No,
right?
not quite that old. Yeah. Although I do know what a cassette is. But that really formed this always learning, starting to understand, role models and mentors who had real genuine stories that was less about corporate career stories and more about, human stories, getting over challenges in your life, getting over, things that you felt were holding you back, and developing skills, the concept of you can be whatever you be if you learn and put your heart and effort into it.
I like what you just said there about how you followed the people that had real stories, not just corporate ones. That's an interesting little point to really highlight there, team, because we all have this inherent bullshit radar, don't we? We all have one. And for a lot of us, especially those of us that are trying to do more with our lives, and I've done it, I know I've done it, when you can sometimes ignore that radar that's going off like the clappers. Yeah. Because you feel that you see what this person's got or what this person's doing, and you go, well, that's what I want. Therefore, I need to consume whatever it is that they're selling, right?
Yeah.
We're going to go back to that because I think that's going to definitely play a part in the rest of this conversation. But before we go any further, because I can feel the train of momentum building quite nicely, I ask everybody this question, and I personally believe that high performance has the 4 key elements: success, connection, influence, happiness, and they all come together, and not one can't survive without the other. Always intrigued to find out what my guest's definition of high performance is. So what is your definition, Belinda Sinclair, of what high performance human is?
High performance for me is excelling beyond expectations. And I think a double click there is, well, whose expectations is an interesting question. But for me, it's very much aligned to the principles of continuous learning, having a purpose with clarity, and then what's the discipline and consistency to be able to deliver on that. So, that really brings it together for me. But I'm very mindful, as you said, you can't really focus on one without the other, because I don't think performance, whether it's in personal life or professionally, if you have a great purpose but you don't have a work ethic or you don't have the discipline to follow through, it doesn't really happen. So it's that interconnectivity, I suppose, of those principles.
Right. All right, I'm going to throw a curveball at you straight away. Where do you think discipline comes from?
Ooh. Where does it come from in terms of
where do you find it?
Where do you bring it out? I think part of the discipline is how strong the goal or purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
So that powers the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I think discipline is learnt in terms of discipline is as simple as, discipline can be a habit. And I think about the discipline of, do you brush your teeth every morning?
Yep.
Is that discipline, or do you form a habit and then it no longer feels like discipline? It
Yep.
just feels natural.
Yep.
So I think part of discipline is how do you create those continuous habits so they no longer feel like a chore or an effort. And then there's the other, behaviors or shifts you make, whether you're trying something new or you've got more of a maybe short-term goal that you're going after. We use the example all the time, like, I'm trying to get fit. What disciplines are you going to apply so that you can reach that goal? And they don't feel very habitual for a fair while.
Big time.
They're an effort. And I think when I come back to it though, discipline is driven by the why, driven by the purpose, and driven by how important, that is to achieve for yourself.
Awesome answer from a question that was without notice. I really, really like that one. I've been toying with this whole discipline, consistency thing, and having conversations around, and I love that you brought it to the strength of your purpose, the strength of, your why, your vision, whatever you want to call it, however you want to package it.
Yeah.
I've been starting to play with the word loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
And your loyalty towards your vision. How loyal are you towards what it is that you want to achieve and whatnot, right? Because I think that discipline has become over-conversed, hasn't it?
Yep.
Even the conversation of discipline starts to feel arduous after a very, very short period of time, right? It's not the nicest word in the world. I love how you've switched that from discipline to habit, so that you can get over the hump of it being tedious and it just becomes automated in one's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. All right. There's a few things that I want to dig into with you.
Okay.
A few things. Because you, for me, are a tremendous role model. As you mentioned yourself, you are a tremendous role model and I'm not just going to say for women. I'm not going to turn this into a big, Go Women podcast, right? You're a tremendous role model for humans, full stop, in the sense of you manage to have a real, from what I can gather, from what my sense of you have a real good balance in your mind as to the different elements of your life. You don't have, I hate the whole work-life balance thing because it's all part of your life, right? But I think that the way that you have your life balanced, to me, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you've got a good little thing going on right now. So talk to me about that first and foremost. Like, from your point of view, especially because you mentioned there that you had this curiosity to try new things, side projects and so on and so forth. And then when parenthood struck, your priorities shifted and you shifted all that sort of jazz, but you've still managed to maintain a really cool trajectory with your professional career still, right?
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Because a lot of people, and I will say, a lot of mums, let's face it, a lot of mums hear a screeching halt to their ambitions as soon as kids come along.
Absolutely.
Which is a bit naff, right?
Naff and sad.
It is. It's sad. I've got this. I think that the amount of talent that is at home, sat there.
Yeah.
I mean, look, being a mom, most important gig in the world, right? Let's not beat around the bush with that. But the amount of talent that's left on the table is mad.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how, because there's going to be a lot of people that are listening to this, a lot of mums and a lot of dads that feel that having kids has stopped them, prevented them. They've become resentful of it because of the fact that it's stopped them from progressing their own personal lives and careers the way they want it to go.
Yeah.
How did you handle that?
So a few things. I think part of it comes back to role modeling. And so I'll share a quick story that really helped me get over that hump of parenthood doesn't have to halt, or shift my career aspirations. So I'd been at Domain for about 18 months, very focused. I'd had some leadership roles in prior, small leadership roles in prior businesses, very focused that I was back as an individual contributor but wanted to move back into leadership. Sort of ticking all the boxes, taking on mentors, doing leadership courses, and a role wasn't coming up. I fell pregnant, and I was 8 months pregnant when my dream role comes up. So the first opportunity in the business. And I went to speak to the hiring manager, and I said, obviously, pointed to my big tummy and said, obviously, this is not great timing at all. I'm assuming, given I'm about to go on maternity leave, I should park this one for now and revisit when I came back. And always grateful. I had a leader, John, and he said, absolutely not. If you've been working towards this, if you think you're the right person for a role, absolutely go for it. And 2 weeks before I go on maternity leave, I got offered a sales manager role, told that go enjoy your baby and come back to a new role and a new team, and we can't wait to have you come back and, shine in that role. So for me, that one moment, that decision, I think changed my belief in terms of what's possible for mums or, parents going on paternity leave, and has been really powerful for me as a leader now. It's a bit painful when people go on extended leave, go on paternity leave. But knowing that was done for me, I was actually having a conversation to one of our team members this week, just found out she's pregnant, wants to progress her career. And
congratulations to her.
Yes. And I said, absolutely, knowing you're part of our business, part of my team, is don't you even let that come into your head. You go for the role, and, whatever everyone else works around you for that's our job to sort out. Don't let circumstances get in the way. So that's been one element. Since then, I think, part of it is making sure you love what you do. So I think that's part of the challenge between, say, being a parent and a career, is making sure it does suck sometimes, walking out the door, leaving your kids, missing out on certain opportunities. So making sure you're going to a place where you feel like you are also adding value, where you also have purpose.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing for me, that as I found this new purpose as a mum, I had to re-find a different purpose for me at work as well, so that I found work and a career meaningful enough to put in the extra effort and to know I was making the right decision every time I walked out the door.
Okay, so you had to redefine what all of that meant to you.
Yes.
So what was the change in definition, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. So I think up until having children, there was this aspirational of proving myself out to be really successful, proving I can progress into different roles, a little bit driven by money. Can I earn more money? Therefore, with that money, can I invest in a property, or, what can I do to prove that I can, on my own? I think that was a big thing for me in my 20s and early 30s. What can I achieve on my own before I get married and hopefully achieve with a partner? So then moving into being a parent, I shifted to finding a purpose at work, which was really hanging tight to this role of being a leader. How do I add value to those in my team? How do I help them build careers and have, great lives for themselves and their families? And very much this servant leadership on how much I can give back. Really grateful for what I've achieved, and, how can I help others do the same? And so that really drove me for the last 10 years to feel like I was really contributing to something more than just a career for myself.
Interestingly, John, I think it's the same John that we were referring to, maybe.
Different John, actually.
Different
this
John.
one's moved on. But
this one's moved on.
But
all right,
I do have another John now
yeah,
as
we've
my
got
leader.
another John.
Yes.
So John Fung, who's been a guest on our podcast, and he talked about us all having gifts, and us being able to share our gifts with those around us for the benefit of everybody and all that sort of stuff. It sort of ties in with becoming a parent, right? It's almost, and I think what you've described there is almost tapping into that parent mentality
Yeah.
of helping nurture and grow these, I don't want to say little people, like these new humans into the world, and relating that maternal instinct to your role and almost substituting almost one for the other in that one period of time, which is really, really cool. I had a similar challenge, right?
Okay.
And it was actually forced upon me by my ex in a really cool way.
Yeah.
Because I'd gone through the opposite end, right? It was all paternal. I was going through a bit of depression, all that sort of stuff, finding any reason to get out of the house.
Yeah.
Subconsciously. And she made me take every other Wednesday off for a dad day. She goes, if you don't take it off, kid's going to be home alone. Not a good idea. So I was like, shit, okay. But what I quickly came to discover then was that it allowed me in the sales role to really protect the value of my time when I was out in the field. And I reasoned with it. And even when it came to the commission conversations, when I was at a listing presentation, people are trying to challenge me on commission. I said, look, as much as I appreciate that you want to make sure that you're getting enough bang for your buck, at the same time, I need to make sure that there's enough value in this to justify me being away from my kids.
Yeah.
And that natural switch of, well, if you're not going to bring me, if this isn't going to have enough value in it for me, I'm not taking it on.
Yeah.
End of. Really fascinating how that happens, right? And it's almost like, did you do it on purpose? Because mine was almost by accident.
I don't know if I did it on purpose at the start. I think it became purposeful once you realise the power.
But you kind of stumble into it, don't you?
Absolutely.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And that's something for your notes, gang. If you're a new parent or a young parent or parent to young kids and you're feeling like this is a real stumbling block, lean into it a little bit. Like, honestly, lean into it a touch, right?
Yep.
And just have a feel for what power it can bring as opposed to the hindrance that it has. Because that power is big, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think you never see the power of, I always talk about where it's a working parent that, so I don't want to say working mum because there's a lot of really hands-on men and dads. And I think those ones that are absolutely juggling and managing their time to still perform, really strongly at work, but still make time. They can be the soccer coach at 5 p.m. and how do they make that work? And that's part of, again, as you talked about before, it's not really the balance of life, but how you prioritize and absolutely know that you're going to get 100% out of me when I'm in work mode, but also that I have these other non-negotiables and I'm going to make sure that you always get so much out of me because then on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock, I know I've got to drop my daughter up to dancing and have her ready and in that outfit. And and I think that's how you get very deliberate in terms of both what are the priorities here, what are the non-negotiables, and how do I make, I'm not going to be just stuffing around, hanging out in the kitchen at work, really deliberate about what you focus on.
That word deliberate is tremendously powerful in the context of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
It really, really is. And I would put that in capital letters in your notes there, deliberate. And I think understanding as well that you don't, and this sort of, it alludes to a point that you kind of made earlier on the, like sort of almost on the quiet there, was that you took purposeful decisions around, like deliberate decisions around how you're going to function your life. Tremendously fortunate, I'm sure you would feel, to have been in an environment and with a leader that allowed you the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, so that's part of it, of course, having that little bit of luck to be in that environment. But I think in today's day and age, you can be very, very deliberate as to how you go about your game of life, right? I think you can. When you're blending all the bits and bobs of your life together, I think you can be a lot more deliberate and a lot more purposeful in the decisions that you make. You don't have to be a passenger or be dictated to when it comes to how you set your life out, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting stuff. Now, I wanted to talk about the things that we actually had on our agenda,
Yep.
right? I warned you.
We'll come back to them.
I warned you that could happen, right? And that's a pure compliment to you, by the way, that's happened. So, you are a leader of a rather big sales team, right?
Yep.
I mean, how many sales players are you responsible for?
I have around 100 in my team.
Around 100.
Around 100.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you will have big says and sways in terms of recruitment, in terms of, in culture, environment, ethos, mentality, drive, all that sort of stuff, right? All the big things. Now, when we tie that and your role along with what we were just talking about there in terms of that mothering sort of instinct to bring the best out of others and nurture people and whatnot. Obviously, with salespeople, there are lots of different personalities.
Yep.
Right? How do you identify the path towards high performance in any one individual? Because obviously, it's not one shoe fits all.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you go about identifying the best ways to help tune into that high performance for other people?
So I think there's probably two different ways I handle it in terms of now where it's all about scaling, and influencing opposed to this direct coaching.
Yep.
So if I go back 5 years when I, responsible directly for the salespeople, very much working out how am I going to coach and, drive your performance and manage your efforts based on your style, your motivation, your skill set. Now to where I rely on a whole lot of sales directors, leaders within my team to roll that out to most of the sales team. So it's been really different, and that was a big challenge on how do you create culture when you're scaling through other people? How do you create coaching methodology when you're, relying on other people to actually implement it? So a big thing for me, in my earlier years, I ran a culture, and as a leader, my ethos was one of the principles is have your team know that you've got their back as long as, they're doing the right thing.
I like that.
And to the point where I used to have some of my team say to me, the reason I try so hard is I want to make you proud. Now, that's pretty powerful as a leader to hear that that's part of the driver. And so that was my philosophy on how I led in the first few years. I realized that's a lot harder to execute when you're starting to, rely on
and you've
leadership
got a couple
through
of degrees
others.
of separation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then it came a lot more to how am I both setting up a culture in terms of the expectations and values that we have as a leadership team and how we're going to run our teams, but also setting up the right processes and systems and rhythms so that we are really clear on the expectations of what does high performance and what does role clarity look like, and then working, based on personalities on the style in terms of how you're going to address or coach and mentor those to, to get there or to, get past there.
Yeah, okay. I like the word rhythm in all that. How important is it for you? And put a bit of a definition around this, right?
Yeah.
How important is rhythm for you when it comes to achieving a higher level of performance?
I think rhythm ties into that discipline, that habit in terms of we operated for a fair while on having, watching what good people did, reminding, if you're not sure what good looks like, go talk to that person who's a high performer. And what I realized is that's really hard, again, to scale. And so driving a rhythm in terms of really helps people have clarity and set expectations. And when I think of rhythm for our sales team, we set a rhythm in terms of how we operate with our customers. So even for our customers, if you tell them, I'm going to come and see you on a monthly basis, I'm going to, and on a quarterly basis, we're going to run through territory planning and business planning. And on a monthly basis, I'm going to come and speak to your sales team. That really sets expectations and allow yourself to be accountable to what you've made sort of a contract or a promise to with a customer. So we try and set up a a rhythm for customers, then a rhythm internally on how we manage performance, how we look at pipeline and forecasting and, all those sort of checkpoints to make sure that if you have the right rhythm with the customer, right rhythm internally, and then partner that with a great environment of culture, then that's how we see high performance driven within my team.
I like rhythm. I really do like the word rhythm. I'm trying to find different words for that discipline thing, right? And I think rhythm is a really, really cool word for it.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool word because it's kind of like when you go for a big run.
Yeah.
I was speaking to Kay Bretz, who is a ridiculous human being, a little German Aussie who runs ultra marathons.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Like we're talking hundreds of Ks in one sitting.
That's very impressive.
It's mental. It's weird. I told him he's got a screw loose or something. Anyway, and even though he runs for hundreds of kilometers, the rhythm that he gets in his body into allows him to just traverse those tremendous distances with a relative level of ease that many of us would struggle with.
Yeah.
And it's a real cool little analogy for rhythm in a business, rhythm in a sales team, rhythm in any sort of organization, right?
Yeah.
If you can get into a steady rhythm, then it allows the ability for things to become habitual.
Yeah.
It makes that a lot easier, right?
Absolutely.
If you set that early rhythm.
Yeah.
I'm relating it to my own training with my boxing and whatnot. And you're doing a 3-minute round and your arms are hanging off you wherever. And you get as soon as you get into a bit of a pace when you're hitting the bag, it becomes easier.
Yeah.
Because you're at a pace, you're in a rhythm that allows you to see that thing through that is really painful.
Yep.
So that's a really good way of looking at it, right? I really like that word rhythm.
I also think cool. So that comes up a lot within our teams, and we see that as part of our, for my leadership team, our role is how do we allow our team to stay focused on the rhythm, and how do we navigate quietening down the noise? So whether it's the noise, I call it the noise, but it's the distractions that come up. And I know what might seem like a little initiative you just want the sales team to add to their workload or focus this quarter can actually derail them because you shift them out of that rhythm.
Yeah.
And so that's a big focus for us in terms of how do we really prioritize and monitor what noise we allow our sales team to be distracted by.
Yeah, because Domain is a tremendously innovative firm, right? It has to be. Got no choice.
Yes, I hope
and
so.
I'm sure there could be a million things that you could throw at your sales team and say, right, let's look at this, and this.
Yeah.
But it flatters to deceive, right? It really does. I love that you've recognized that and that you need to identify the certain cadence that you need to bring things in to a team's rhythm that allows it to be taken on without it disturbing the pace of how things are moving along.
Yeah.
That's
and
fascinating.
Even that runway of time it takes so identifying for whatever the priority or initiative is, how long is it going to take the team to establish a rhythm, and then how long do they need, or what airspace do they need to then complete it? Because that's what I see happens a lot in big companies, and I get pulled into it all the time. You see there's a shiny new thing, there's a big opportunity, and there's always 100, opportunities we could focus on.
Look, it's big or small.
Yep.
Sole traders.
Yes.
Right? I've fallen into that trap. I'm sure you have as well with your umpteen side projects and all that sort of jazz. You see a nice shiny thing or something that can earn you some short-term income if you're a sole trader and you're starting a new business, and you end up doing a whole bunch of stuff really in a really average way, or to a really average standard, as opposed to going, you know what, it's cool, but is it taking away from achieving the long-term things that we've set out to achieve?
Absolutely.
It's something that so many of us fall into, right?
Yeah.
And that's whether it's financial or physical or spiritual.
Yeah.
We are wired right now to go for everything in as short a time frame as possible.
Yeah.
So we see a shortcut.
Oh, absolutely. We're primed for distraction. You look at, pick up your phone and be ready to be distracted.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pretty full on. And so How do you go about guarding your team against those distractions? I mean, yes, you'll have KPIs, barometers for success, some cold hard black and whites that are not non-deniable
Yes.
in terms of success or achievement. But outside of the black and white, how do you as a leader go about helping people to cut out that noise?
Yeah. So for me, I try and run everything by a lens of how, what's the impact to the customer and what's the impact to the business and then what's the impact to the person. And use those principles to, quickly run a sense check or pulse check on any initiative or concept. I think it's a really challenging one. Sometimes the distraction is just something shifting in the business that's not even relating to them directly, but they might hear of a change in leadership in another department and just depending on how much you make a fuss of that or how you handle that communication can either distract or calm a team. And so I think, in terms of how I handle it is I'm pretty tough now. There's been a little bit of a...
You? Tough?
It's my joke, and I've been working with John Fung on this, is because of my personality style and the deep relationships I build, especially with people across our business, is what was my ability to hold people accountable and get things done. And so that's been a bit of a, my continuous growing leadership shift over the last couple of years. And we joke about it at work now. Where's Bad Bell? So my nickname's Bell. What's Bad Bell look like? And Bad Bell isn't mean. Bad Bell just holds people accountable and pushes back when I need to. And so that's been part of my process as different functions come to me and say, we want to deliver this project. We need the sales team to jump on board for this is... Bad Bell steps up and runs through those assessments on what does this mean for the customer? What does this mean for our business? And where's the prioritization for the disruption of the team? And I push back on a lot more than I used to, where I used to, smile and say, sure, we can, become a bit of a yes person and taking those on. And now I just see that power of compounding, and as you talked about, whether that's working on finances in personal life, but that compound effect where you stay focused and true to just a few key areas, the power of that and the success you see when that's followed through is just momentous.
And it's a massive credit to you that you've not needed to develop Bad Bell
until recently.
I mean, the fact that you've got as far as you've got without needing to, put a bit of a sharp edge to you is a tremendous credit to you. It's tremendous credit. I mean, look, the amount of times that you see online and in socials and all that sort of stuff about, the hard alpha beating their chest and all that sort of jazz. And that is one of the reasons why lots of people have this inherent belief, false belief, that humans of your DNA will have a ceiling. You'll have a limited capacity in terms of where you can get to. But honestly, and I'm really glad that we've had that part of the conversation, because your ability to get people to do things, your ability to hold influence to that point without needing Bad Bell. I mean, geez, half these people, if they had even an ounce of that in their game, they'd be billionaires.
Yeah.
They'd be so much more successful, right? There's something to be said about that.
Yes.
There's something to be said about that. I think nice guys do finish last.
Yep.
But good humans are the ones that win, because they understand the ability. They understand the ability or the time to be a little bit more tough.
Flex. Yeah, and I think I know John Fung, and we've talked a lot about this at Domain, the concept of what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
And so that's been an area that, I am proud that I have been able to be the type of leader, the type of human at 100%. Work and get as far as I did without having to flex that muscle.
Yep.
But also recognizing there's a point in time where you need to, because I was starting to see that, oh, hold on, am I going to be able to move to the, the
Plateauing
next
a little
stage?
bit.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just the evolutionary process,
Yeah.
right? That's just evolution. But there's plenty of people that wouldn't have got half as far as what you've got without that edge, right? So it just screams.
Yeah, it served me well for, and obviously I still try and bring it.
Be cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely you do. Now, and it sort of segues into how you create connection with your team. I want to dig into this superpower that you've clearly got. We've talked about how you have this ability to disarm and so on and so forth, but what do you think it is within your DNA that gives you that superpower? Because what I'm hoping here is that we can help a few people identify in you guys as listeners and viewers. You might be. I'm hoping that we might be able to say a couple of things that will go, oh shit, I've got that.
Yeah,
I could do that. So what is it in your DNA, Belinda, that means that Bad Bell didn't even need to make an appearance?
a long time. So I think a big part of this comes back to my ability to be happy and content within myself. And that's not an era of, as we talked about, egotism or saying that I don't ever feel like I have imposter syndrome and I'm not good enough, but very much this learnt skill. And I am a big believer in the power of a smile. And anyone who knows me will know, even sometimes when I'm upset, I weirdly have a smile on my face. But I'm so passionate about creating connection and this sort of open authenticity. I'm generally a really happy, positive person, and I want to showcase that and ooze that to the team and people that I meet. And I find a smile and a genuineness, really helps to establish that, 5-second relationship when you meet someone and you have, okay, how do I feel about this person?
Yep.
Well, that person smiled at me and I could see it was genuine because I looked in their eyes, not just at their mouth.
Yep.
And that establishes a certain, relationship from the very start. From there, I chose a path around authenticity and transparency. And again, I think that sometimes maybe undermines what looks like, oh, Belinda's, really successful. She's got this really senior position, but she's also really upfront and real about what gap she's working on or why she's running late because she had challenges with the kids this morning and being open with that. And so I think that breeds trust as well. And I'm really mindful of earlier in my career when I'm juggling children and those other demands is I used to hide little calendar invites into my diary when I had to do something that was, separate to work. And then made the shift to actually letting my team know if this is happening, sorry guys, I'm running late today because whatever happened with the children or actually on Tuesday in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to have 2 hours off because of whatever reason. And even when things aren't going well in life, not try and create this facade around you, but be genuine. And that's really built trust that therefore people in my team know it's a safe space to be real about what's going on in their life when they've got other demands they need to, deliver on. And I think that's built a really strong culture of knowing that people feel safe and respected and liked, and therefore that brings out the best in people.
Do you think that candor, that honesty, that transparency part of you, do you think that that's at any stage in your career hindered your progress?
I don't know if the honesty has. Generally what I sort of struggle with or internally debate sometimes is I am this big believer that you are always continually learning, continually growing, no matter where you're at in your career. You can always be better, you can do more, you can learn more. And so sometimes I think that openness and transparency in me sharing that being such a strong principle that I believing and therefore acknowledging what I'm working on next does hinder my credibility in certain forums.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't have the right answer on that one because I think it starts to toy with how do I be authentic and true to my values, but also know doing so might hold me back in, certain career moves or in certain environments, depending on who you're around.
And that's a massive debate for a lot of people, right? That's one huge barrier to entry for so many people. And it can sting you. It can sting you, and it can hurt when that happens. I know that, and I won't name names, but I was having a chat with a reputable real estate firm. This was a few years ago now, with a view to taking on a state role.
Yeah.
And it was at a time where I was starting to get really comfortable with my conversations around my own mental health, right? And the challenges around that. And it slipped out in a conversation with one of the leaders. It was like 4 conversations in, and it just slipped out. And it was because it was in a flow of conversation. I felt comfortable, so I said it, and I was like, I'm dealing with mental, but everything's really good. Da 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 da. Radio silence after that conversation. Wow. Radio silence. Now, did it sting? Big time.
Yeah.
But the energy that you get from that rejection, for all intents and purposes, it could go one of 2 ways real quick. You could turn it into a victim style sort of energy of shit. Well, because you're absolutely right. I hate the word author. It gets overused so badly. And I know that you were trying to avoid using it. But ultimately, we can only be true to ourselves. If we're going to do this high performance human thing, we have to be true to ourselves. At some stage or another, we just got to face up to it.
Yeah.
Right. And then that allows us to figure out where we need to get better and things like that. But that energy can either be turned into a victim energy, or it can be turned into a drive.
Yeah.
A real drive in where we want to go and where we want to be. And it really did. It didn't put a chip on my shoulder, but it gave me that one-eyed thing. Well, you know what? Screw it. If it's going to take me a little bit longer, it's going to take me a little bit longer. And I know for a fact that the way that I am and who I am and all that sort of stuff, it isn't going to be for everyone. And much like yourself, Belinda, I'm sure there'll be, especially with some of the boardrooms that I'm sure you've been in, right? Where you've had people judge you because you're smiley and happy and all that sort of stuff. I mean, you're ridiculously sharp mind and all the rest of it, but you'll get judged. And I've no doubt, and I'm sure you've got no doubt, that there would have been judgments made on you that would have hindered your progress down the track for sure. But it doesn't stop you. It just might prolong the inevitable, right?
Yeah.
And it comes back to that loyalty of vision that we talked about earlier on. I'm really glad that we've digged into that bit of the conversation because so that is such a barrier.
I think what's been really interesting for me, and it comes back to, like, I'm big on self-awareness and EQ and how important that is. And, I'm mindful that there's a lot of respect for a lot of leaders in the corporate world, in our industry, but I also call bullshit on some of them as well. And
big time.
I've been in boardrooms worked alongside other sales directors where I know my team is delivering more, I'm delivering more, and then I hear this bullshit coming out and bravado around what's going on in their team. And so I do have this inherent belief that someone, the smart leaders, the smart CEOs are going to pick that up at some point, and it may not be today, but I know I've decided as you said, it might be a little bit slower in some circumstances, but I believe in the end that gets seen.
And I think so many more leaders are so much more aware now, right? They can see through a lot of the bravado, which is probably why, your evolution as a professional is going up a notch again. I didn't know a heck of a lot about Belinda until the last few months, but even in the last few months, like the speed, the acceleration, I don't know if you're feeling this, the acceleration that you're going through right now it's a symptom of an increasingly aware society as to what's legit and what's not.
Yes.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Which is interesting. Now, I wanted to ask, before I let you go, I wanted to ask a bit more of a personal question, if this is okay.
Sure.
Because you've got 2 kids. How old are the kids?
6 and 9.
6 and 9. So
Yes.
they're in intense taxi mum mode.
Yes,
I'm doing
lots of
17 different
activity.
things. Mum, come on, I got to play soccer at 5, dancing at 6, chess at whenever.
Yep.
So talk to me about that thing as a parent that has an active role. So an FYI team, as she came into the studio today, she still had her little visitor tag on from her Mums with Muffins thing for Mother's Day with the kids, right?
Correct.
So she had a clear example on her jacket as she walked in. How do you reason? We talked about understanding the need to feel that you are providing enough value and so on and so forth. But I'm sure you'll have mum guilt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How do you handle that shit? Because it's not nice.
Oh, it's tough. I think that's one you never really learn how to deal with or tackle or feel great off the back of it. A big call out for me is my husband.
Mm-hmm.
So we're absolutely parent partners in terms of, I call it, the divide and conquer scenario, and
Yes.
where I may miss certain things, I
Yep.
know that my husband will bow in. And so maybe you don't have mum picking you up every day, but you'll have mum or dad most days. Similarly, you may not have mum and dad at every event, but you'll have mum or dad. And so have we made ourselves interchangeable, and it's not more important to have mum there than dad there,
Yep.
that we're equal in that parent role. So
Yep.
that's been a game changer for my ability to have a successful and quite demanding career, but also feel like my children are feeling secure and loved and important.
Yep.
I think the other one for me is being, I focus on what are the moments that matter to a child, because
Okay.
it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. And so I've been very focused on how do I think about what are the important moments for my children? And I'll give an example. So this morning at 7:30 was muffins with mum. And I know your kids get really proud to, be there with their friends and show off a parent and do something that's a little bit special and different.
Yep.
So absolutely made sure I was there for that. I also noticed, so I do school drop-offs. My kids' school start at 8, which is fantastic because I can drop off and still,
bolt.
be at the office or at meetings.
Yep.
But I notice I can't do many pickups, but I really try and do one pickup because I notice that they unload unbelievably about that day and they
Yeah.
run out of steam, an hour or two later. And so picking a day a week that I pick them up, being there for important events, doing some one-on-one time with each of them. So again, I feel guilty all the time that I'm not there enough. But yeah, feel okay knowing that I'm there for those moments that matter.
And I think that's a really important thing for your notes team. Whether you're a mum or a dad, feeling guilty is okay.
Yeah.
It shows that you care. It shows that you actually like being a parent, right? Which is a good thing.
Yes.
So if you didn't feel guilt, then, maybe your priorities are a little bit different to mine and Belinda's. But it's okay to feel the guilt as long as you know that you're doing your best.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what you just said there, Belinda. You can look yourself in the mirror and know that you're doing your best to be there when you can be there, understanding that you ain't going to be there every time.
Yeah.
And this is probably part of my problem when I first became a parent, is I thought I was going to be the best dad in the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to be there. I'm going
There
to do
for
this.
everything.
I'm going to do that. And then when reality hit very early on, like 2-3 months in, that was horrible. It was a horrible, harsh reality to actually face up to.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at this high performance human thing, ultimately, a lot of us are going to become parents at some stage, and we're going to have to deal with this shit. And I think what Belinda said there is a wonderful way to bring this conversation to a head. As long as you can look at yourself in the mirror, know you've done the best you can, you're doing all right. And then the guilt's okay.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Very, very good. Now, before I let you go, this has been such a good conversation. It really, really has. Like I say that at the end of all my episodes, right? I really
I
do.
have heard that,
I say that,
Andy.
I say that in all my episodes. But the obvious thing that's hitting me in this conversation is that you are unequivocally who you are. How you come out, how you get about, and all that is 100% Belinda Sinclair. And I can feel why so many people have trusted you with their careers and whatnot moving forward, because I feel comfortable. I feel comfy and cozy having this conversation. It is brilliant. And that is an absolute testament to who you are and how you go about your business. So I can't thank you enough for being here. Now, one last question, though. You may have alluded to it, I reckon. In your pursuit of your version of high performance, what do you think is the one thing missing in your game right now?
What's missing is, I feel like I need to, because I've got a personal one and a professional one.
All right.
So my personal one is health and fitness, and I'm trying really hard, and I've got an absolutely excellent Saturday routine for my health and fitness, but really want to look to how do I expand that and make sure I am mindful around, my health and fitness with consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And then professionally, it's what we've talked today. It's navigating this hump or this conundrum for me of the perception of myself versus, I think, my capability.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, because I am always navigating that conundrum, that itself will hold me back from high performance in certain arenas.
We think too much sometimes, don't we?
Absolutely.
Don't we? I'm exactly the same. I know that because I'm a little bit sweary and a little bit sounding different and sounding like a very simple Englishman, I feel exactly the same sometimes.
Yes.
I feel exactly the same. So I completely understand and empathise where you're coming from with that. Hey, Belinda Sinclair, it's been an absolute joy. It really, really has. I would love to just sit and chew the fat with yourself and your husband, who is a POM, I believe.
He is a POM. That's why I love hearing you speak. It feels very comfortable.
Another escapee.
Exactly.
Another escapee from the motherland, thankfully. Bless him. I'd love to chew the fat over dinner at some stage. You're an absolute joy to be around, and I would love to have you back on the show at some stage down the track. We should do a panel. I think maybe with John and maybe one or two others. We'll do a bit of a collaboration, I think, somewhere down the track. But thank you so much for coming on the show. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy. It's been great, and you're very good. I feel like you draw out those stories that you probably thought, I probably won't go down that path today.
Oh well.
But no, it's been great conversation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely, pleasure's all mine. Team, as always, stay safe, healthy, happy. Review your notes on this one, and particularly if you are a parent or a young parent. We weren't intending on going down that track, but I'm bloody glad we did. I'm really bloody glad we did, because that's going to bring a lot of value to a lot of you that are feeling a little bit trapped sometimes by this whole thing of parenting. So have a re-listen and take a few bits, because I'm sure you've got the power within you. Lean into it a little bit and get yourself ahead with your pursuit of high performance. Until next time, look after yourselves, team. Take care.